In today's video, I'm going to show you how you can draw this cute cartoon beaver from start to finish using the iPad in Procreate. This is also the first video on my channel where I've used my new Pro Draw grip for the Apple Pencil, which we'll talk more about here in a second. Just like all my videos, it's in real time. There's no time lapse and no edits. And if you follow along with any of my videos, feel free to share your designs on social media. If you're on Instagram or Twitter, tag me at BeeJayDeL for a chance to see your work featured in one of my upcoming videos, like the artists you see here that followed along with my last video showcasing the cartoon mummy. But today it's all about drawing the cartoon beaver, so keep watching. All right guys, so let's go ahead and draw this cute cartoon beaver. Starting out, I'm using a 4000 by 4000 300 DPI canvas. It's an RGB canvas. For my brushes today, I'm going to be using my cartooning set. I'm going to start out using the sketch pencil. To begin with, we're going to switch over to the standard inker streamline later on once we start to ink. For my color palette, once again, I've got this pre-made, so if you want to download the exact same colors that I'm using in today's video, you can find that on my website. If you go to BeeJayDeL.com, underneath the YouTube reference materials page, which is linked down below too, you'll find a link to that along with a video at the top of the page, kind of walks you through how to install a palette in Procreate if you've never done it before. And then finally, this is my first video ever that I'm using my new Pro Draw grip for Apple Pencil. If you missed the announcement video on this, I started a new company named Pro Draw. This is the first product release. Made this from scratch, from the ground up. Been working on this for about the past 2 years. Just announced it the other day, so if you missed that video, check the card up in the top corner there to watch that, learn all about the creation of this. Super comfortable, better control, ergonomic. It's great. I want you guys to get it in your hands, so definitely check it out. So to begin with then, let's jump into it. I'm going to start out using red for my sketch today. We'll see how this shows up on the camera. I've not used red in a video before for the sketch. Like I said, starting out with that cartoon sketch pencil here. And I'm just going to start out with a basic oval shape here. It's going to be our head. Like I've said before, I really like to start out with basic shapes to kind of help guide the creation process. Helps you get ideas out of your head and onto the canvas easier if you start using basic shapes like this, and then you can connect them like we're going to do here. So where these line up then, I'm just going to kind of pull those down and around to connect them. We'll kind of angle off the top of the head here, and then this is going to be the chin part down here, so you can kind of see the start of that. Same thing here, just basic shapes to knock in where the ears are going to go. And then we can do the body here. I think for the head, we're going to have this as kind of a front-facing view here for the head. And then for the body, we'll kind of have it more as a 3/4 view. So we'll have the center line kind of like this, which will help us draw our body shape. So it's going to be kind of like a lima bean coming down and around. Get that down here like that. As this curves around here then, I'm going to kind of angle this out some more and pull it back down for the leg. Starting here from the center then, we'll pull another line down and back here for the foot, which will come around the front there. Pull our other leg and foot here. And with this perspective that we're using, this foot of course, and this leg, can be kind of tucked in behind. It's going to be smaller and not as wide because of this perspective that we're using. And now we can do the arms. I think for this, with the kind of flow of the lines that we've got, I'm going to go ahead and have him with his arms and his hands kind of resting on his hips down here. So to do that, we'll start out with, once again, basic shapes. So the upper arm here, we'll draw some ovals here for that. Once again, the one on this right side is going to be bigger than the one on the left because of the angle and the perspective. Do another oval down here. And then the hand back here is another oval, just like that. Now that we have the shapes, it's going to help us kind of see where the lines need to be. So we can start pulling in this upper arm, comes down into the forearm here. Same thing here. Kind of have an overlap here where the hand's going to crease. Then we'll have that backhand there. And same thing here. Kind of have a crease and then backhand there. All right, we also need to get the tail in here, so we'll kind of map out where that goes. Some basic curves there. Probably do some cross hatching across here too, just to give that a little bit of texture. Just like that. And now we can kind of finish up here on the head some more and add in some details here. So I'm going to make these ears a little bit more kind of curved here, just like that. The insides here. Now remember, with the head, we've got this a front-facing view now. So everything's going to be pretty symmetrical here. Let's go ahead and add the eyes here. Just some ovals there, making sure that we've got those evenly spaced between that center line. Get the pupils there. Iris lines around there. Get the nose across here. Kind of wider here at the top and then narrowing back down towards the bottom there. All right. Maybe some eyebrows across there. And then let's go ahead and do kind of like a muzzle here. We'll have that coming over top of the eyes. So the eyes are going to be covered here at the bottom by this muzzle coming down and around. Just like that. Kind of bring the mouth back up into the nose there. Get the teeth in here, of course, one of the big defining characteristics of the beaver. Get those in there. Continue that muzzle back down into there. And maybe pull out some tufts of hair here at the side as well. Just like that. And then finally here, probably pull some belly lines so it's got a different color belly. A little belly button. You got a line there for the belly as it comes into the legs. I think that's pretty good. So obviously this is really, really rough. The line stage, the inking stage, that's where we really get into fine-tuning everything. So I like to keep my lines rough. I like to keep my sketch rough during this stage. Helps me just come up with ideas here, like kind of pulling some tufts of hair across, just like that. And then over here, let's add in kind of like a background here. So I'm gonna pull in just kind of like a log here, keeping up with the beaver theme, and then some wood texture lines there. We've got the rings here at the top. We'll throw in some grass down here. And we'll bring in just a different color down here for the ground. And I think that's pretty good. So there we go. That's gonna be our sketch. Pretty quick, pretty simple, using those basic shapes. Really rough, like I said, this is where we fine tune it in this next step, and that is the inking stage. So let's do that next. For the inks, first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come up here to my layers menu and I'm gonna make a new layer. This is gonna be where our inks go. Layer 2 is our inks. Layer 1, still our sketch. What I wanna do though is dragging down the opacity of this. So if I hit N for blend mode and bring down the opacity to about 25%, 26%. I want to be able to see it, but I don't want it to be distracting. I don't want it to take away from what we're doing here. This is also why I don't super fine tune that sketch stage. As you can see, it loses a lot of those lighter lines. So this is why I keep it rough. We're gonna fine tune it now. We're gonna switch over our color to black. That's gonna be our inks color. And then back to our brush library, I'm gonna switch over to that standard inker streamline. That's gonna be our brush. You can see here, I've got this set to, I think it's about 9–10% here is where I keep the kind of preferred size on this canvas. So we've got that set, and now we're ready to start inking. But before we do that, I always like to decide where my light source is coming in from, because I like to use different line weights. So the benefits of using different line weights is where the shadows are gonna be, they're gonna be a thicker line. When the line weights are thinner, that means they're gonna be closer to the light source, and they're gonna be where the highlights are. When I say this though, I don't mean a drastic difference such as this. That's super drastic. It's more subtle. It's not something that's going to be jarring or look bad. It's something that, like I said, it should just be something subtle that the viewer doesn't even really think about. It's just also going to help you when you go in to add the highlights and the shadows as well, and kind of keep your mind in that same zone where it needs to be and knowing where they go. So let's have the light source on this one coming from that top left-hand corner. So thinner lines here, thicker lines here at the back and down at the bottom. Now that we have that decided on, let's go ahead and start here with the face. I'm gonna zoom in just a little bit so you can see it a little bit better. And we will start here with the nose. Just since it's kind of in the center here, it's a good jumping off point. I'll drag and drop my color here. I'm gonna switch over to my eraser to add a highlight in here. And to make sure my eraser is the same thing as my pencil, if I just hold down on that, it's gonna switch the eraser to the same brush that I'm using for the pencil. And now I'm gonna move back to my pencil, or my brush. Gonna come down and around here next. Now, these are gonna be a little bit lighter lines at the top because these are inside of the design. They're not the lines on the outside. They're not outlines. So these lines here, until they come down and serve as an outline, are gonna be a little bit thinner. So keep that in mind. Here, I'm gonna start from that line first. And then we'll continue these lines and around. All right, keep going here. Now, one thing to keep in mind too, the sketch layer is, what I say is just kind of a suggestion of where your line should go. I try not to use the sketch layer as the be-all, end-all as far as my lines, just because I want to keep kind of an organic feel to this. If you go over your sketch lines and it feels like you're tracing them, it's gonna look too mechanical. It's not gonna feel like there's a lot of energy there to it. So when you do the inking, the outlining, I really suggest just kind of, like I said, using the sketch as a suggestion. Now with the eyes here, the reason I backed out of this, I like to have a heavier line at the top to kind of give the illusion of that eyelid on the top. So to do this, I start out with a really thin stroke here, a little like light pressure. And as I bring my stroke around, I get heavier with the press and then get lighter towards the end of the stroke there. I'll try it again here on this side to show you again. Lighter to begin with, heavier, and then lighter at the end. That takes a lot of practice, so if you're not getting the exact look that you're wanting, definitely feel free to try it a few times. It's one of the great things with digital art is you have the ability to go back and redo stuff. You're not locked in after you lay down some inks. You can back out of it. So definitely use that to the best of your ability and to your advantage. Now the other thing too, I zoomed in a little bit here so you could see better, but I personally love to zoom in and out quite a bit during my regular work. Right now, I would be in and out all over the place. I know from watching videos and having comments made on videos, I know it's annoying to see that in videos. That's why I try not to do it too much here. But Do it as much as possible. I always say if something looks good when it's zoomed in, when you're really close, it's gonna look even better when you zoom out and you're further away. So definitely use that to your advantage as well. Zoom in and out as much as you possibly can. Just because you don't see me doing it here, believe me, it's not because I don't want to. It's a struggle not to do that in these videos because it's what I constantly do in my process. But I do it for the benefit of the viewers, so feel free to go crazy with it. Now bringing this line up and around, this is going to be a little bit thinner of a line, and then it's going to get thicker as it comes in and around the back. So once again, that's where that light source is coming in from. It's up here. So thinner lines, and you see I just got thicker as we went back here. Same thing with this line. It's going to be thicker as it comes around. And these lines back here are going to be quite thick as well. I'm still going to have a little bit of some thin lines here just because I want that kind of loose feeling of that fur back there. But these other lines here, you're gonna see that's quite thick as those come around. This one's gonna be pretty thin too because it's up at the top of the light source there. And this one's gonna be pretty thick back here. These inside lines, those are gonna be thin just because they are inside of the design and not the outline. So we're using thicker ones back here and the thinner towards the front there. I'm gonna do a couple of dots down here on the muzzle just to add in some texture there. We can also, if you want to, on the tufts of hair here coming out, you can kind of do some scraggly lines there to show some fur. That's one of the techniques I like to do, and just some vertical lines across it. That's always fun. We'll zoom out here and further down so you can see a little bit better now. I think here I'm going to start with the front belly line here coming down into that foot. Once again, this one's going to be thicker because it's an outline, but then again, not super thick because it's going to be towards that light source. These back here are going to be quite a bit thicker. Like I said, because of that perspective, this foot back here, bigger than the foot there at the front. Pretty thin line here coming down. Have that overlap there where the fur is going to fold. That arm's coming in then, maybe a little bit higher there. And the back now. It's again kind of a fold there for that arm and where the hand folds over. The belly line here, once again, thinner just because it's in the center. Belly button right there, and this belly curve here, just kind of with a tapered line there. Get the tail here. Again, kind of thick back here, but then gets even thicker. That's going to be the furthest away from the light source there, so you see that's quite a bit thicker there. Bringing some tapered lines here for that cross hatching. Once again there, you can see I'm not making sure that those are exact with the lines that I laid down to begin with. I want it to feel kind of loose and organic, so I'm not tracing, I'm just throwing them in. And then maybe some dots as well. Always feel free to add to your design if you see something that could benefit from it. All right, moving along here now to the tree stump. Thicker line on top and then thinner down underneath because this part here is going to be inside the outlines. It's not an outline itself, it's inside. Kind of didn't overlap here. I've got an erase now. All right, thicker lines here coming down. Blades of grass here. Doing kind of thinner lines at the top and then thicker at the bottom just to kind of show where the weight of that is. And then bringing this ground area down and around here. And we'll put some dots in here for texture on the ground, maybe some little half circles here just to represent some dirt, and just don't want it to look too plain. Lines here for the texture on the tree. And then the lines here in the center for the rings. Just like that. All right. Gonna zoom in back out now. You can see what we're left with. Let's go ahead and turn off the sketch layer. And you can see here is our lines layer. Inks are done. It looks, I think, pretty good. So from here then, we're ready to move on to adding the color flats, which honestly is the quickest part of the process. So to begin to add the color flats, what we're gonna do is we're gonna set layer 2, our lines layer, as a reference layer. So this allows us to drag and drop colors onto a new layer, and it does not go on the same layer as the lines. It's totally non-destructive, and it's gonna make adding highlights and shadows easier during the next step. So we're gonna make a new layer underneath layer 2. This is gonna be our color flats. And I'm gonna turn the background here just to kind of a different color so we can see stuff as it's dropping in. I'm gonna use just kind of a gray here because we do have some white areas here and we won't be able to tell where to drop them in or that they haven't been dropped in. So with that done now, I'm gonna choose this brown here, third color in on the top row. We're on that new layer 3. I'm gonna drag and drop that here. And then you'll see continue filling with recolor pops up as soon as I drop it. So if I hit that button, there's a cursor that comes up, and you see that cursor is on that ear right now. With that cursor, then I can just tap areas and fill it in. So you don't have to drag and drop every single color that you want to change. I want to lock it in though with my brush before I go back to the color palette, because if I just selected a new color, it's going to change whatever I tapped last. So we'll use the fourth color in here for the ears. Continue filling with recolor. Get that inside here. And then continue tapping wherever I want that. Lock it in with the brush. Back up to the color palette. Got the dark brown here for the tail. Drag and drop that. Continue filling with recolor. Let's see where that is. There we go. And then tap those sections. Brush to lock it in. Back to the color palette. I've got white next for the eyes. And the nose there, the teeth, and we've got those little dots there. The small dots, I would not use the continue filling with recolor. I would do this by hand because those are so small, you're probably gonna hit the outlines. If you hit the outlines, it's gonna mess up your entire design, and you might not realize it until you get further in. And then when you zoom in, you're gonna see these jagged edges all around your lines and wonder what the heck is causing that. It's because when you dropped color in, you accidentally hit a line somewhere. All right, now that we've got the white, let's go ahead and let's do the inside of the eyes, the irises, that blue color down here on the bottom. We're gonna use that later for the background, but let's use that for the eyes there. Got green next, we'll use that for the grass here. This lighter brown here we'll use for the ground color. And finally we've got the darker brown, which we'll use for the tree stump there. That filled in. All right. Then I'm going to turn the background color back to white now that we've got everything done. And you can see that the color flats are done super quick, super easy, especially using that continue filling with recolor. It makes it really, really nice and really quick. So there we go. Color flats finished. Now we move on to adding shadows and highlights. We'll start with the shadows. So to begin with shadows, we're gonna come up here to our layers menu. I'm gonna make a new layer on top of layer 3. It's gonna be our shadows layer. And then I'm gonna tap this and I'm gonna set it as clipping mask. So what this does is it allows us to color in on layer 4. Whatever we color is only gonna show up on the areas that are filled in on layer 3. So if we go out here in the white, we can be sloppy, it's not gonna show up. Before I start though, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn off reference on the lines layer because I'm gonna get some pretty big areas filled in here, and then I just wanna drag and drop the color. If I drag and drop with the reference selected, it's gonna fill it in just like it did during the color flat stage, and we don't want that. All right, so layer 4, we're on there. Colors, we're gonna go down to second row and our first color here. It's gonna be our shadow, and like I said, light source coming in from here means shadows are gonna be here and on the back side here. So I'm gonna begin kind of up here at the top, and we'll start to pull in some shadows. Now this looks really dark and it's gonna fill everything in and color on top of it, but that's okay because we are going to go in here and drop the opacity of this here in a second. But before we do that, I wanna have a large enough portion filled in that we can see how these shadows look on the different colors, and then we can get the right opacity percentage selected. And if we have a larger area filled in, it's gonna give us a better overview of what it looks like across the design. So once I have all this area connected, then I'm just gonna drag and drop the color in there, and you can see I don't have it connected somewhere. Someplace along the line here is not connected, so I need to fill in wherever it wasn't connected, and now it's good. All right, I'm gonna also pull in a shadow here around the top of the eye, make that pop a little bit more. Let's get this shadowed in here. And I think this will probably be enough once we get this done to go ahead and figure out where our opacity needs to be. Now you'll see here, I'm doing a lot of shadows here. I'm filling in this entire backside. I don't want this whole thing to be shadowed. I'm gonna go back in and do some erasing later, but right now, it's gonna be easier if I just fill it all in. All right, with that done then, we're ready to test our shadows. So we're gonna go up here to our layers menu, hit N for blend mode. We're gonna drag down the slider here to see what looks good for our shadows. And I'm thinking about 58, 59% looks pretty good on our shadows. So now I can kind of go back in and start adding in shadows to other parts that need it. A lot of people ask me, where do you decide to put shadows at? And I like them underneath the eyebrows here and into the eyes. Where do I decide to put them at, or how do I decide to shape them? You can see I'm using the lines here that I already established with the inking stage to kind of decide how those shadows should fall. They curve with the lines that I've already done there. I'm gonna hold off on, let's see. I don't know if the shadow, yeah, I guess they look okay. The shadows on the teeth could probably be a better color than the brown, but we're just gonna use that for now. With white, I usually like to go in with a shade of blue, but we're just gonna use this for now. But if you wanna change it, feel free to play around with the different colors in the color palette. See here, a little bit of a shadow here, coming back around, just following the path that I made with those lines initially. Exact same thing here. Using those lines as kind of my guide. Get inside that belly button. Underneath there a little bit. Get inside this ear. There. And then let's go ahead and do the tree stump here. I'm going to pull shadows down to make these lines pop a little bit more. Pull shadows down along the backside of those lines that I did. Once again, following that same flow with the tapers, and then pulling the shadow back into here. You'll see how these kind of come down and taper along the back. And a little bit in here as well. All right, there we go. Let's pull a shadow in here, tree stump, and then the character itself would be given off. Like that. And now is where I'm going to go ahead and start to remove some of the shadows here. We've still got the tail to do, but let's do the removal first. So with the eraser, what I'll do is, see this ear here is completely shadowed in. I'll just remove a little bit along the edges. So now we've got that extra color there. If you have too much of an area shadowed in, like this arm here, the viewer is not really going to be able to see it shadowed because there's no base color next to it. So you don't have the non-shadowed color as something to guide your eye to tell you, oh, okay, that's a shadow there, because there's only one value or one color. So by removing some of this, it helps you establish that, yes, there is a shadow there. I'll probably just pull in kind of like a shape here to bring out that shadow a little bit. We'll see, I'll make it really rough and then go back in with the brush to kind of fine tune it. It's again following the flow of those lines. So you see this line there, this line here follows that, this line here follows that back one. It's a kind of method to the madness. Back to the eraser then. Here we'll pull one across the top there, along the bottom here. And a little bit down here. Yeah, I think that one's okay actually. All right. What else? I'm gonna pop this a little bit more back in there. All right, looks pretty good. Let's do some lines here. Actually, I'm going to switch over here now. Let's go with black, and we'll use that on the grass down here just to pull some tapers in for some shadows down there. The brown just doesn't really give the right color there for the shadow, so I'll switch over to the black. I think I'm going to use the black here across the blue of the eyes as well. The brown looks just a little bit off on the eyes, on that blue part. And I'll erase it from the highlight there. All right, that looks good. Okay, so tail is the last thing we need to do with the shadow. It's going to be, oops, let's switch back to that other color here, the original shadow color. And then do some here on the back side of these lines. So again, just following the lines that are laid in there. All right, so that's it for shadows then. Next up, let's go ahead and work on the highlights. So doing the highlights, pretty much same technique, same idea behind the shadows. New layer here. We're gonna tap that, set it as clipping mask. Back up to the color palette and using this yellow color then, second color in on the second row. Light source coming in here, if you remember. We're just gonna pull in this highlight color around the edge here. And you'll see I don't use a ton of highlights. I like to kind of use highlights a little bit more sparingly than shadows. Maybe throw in kind of like an oval highlight here. Little dot there. Pull it up on the arm here. Just like that. A little bit down here on the belly, the front of it there. This one I want pretty thin. A little bit across here on the top of the tree. And on the grass here. Just like that. Pull a little bit here coming down from the top. Not too much. All right. And not going to have a lot showing here because we got a lot of the shadow coming in from the character, but we'll have just a little bit back there to kind of give that a little bit extra color in the back. And then from here, let's go ahead and drop the opacity of this one. I'm not going to drop it as much as what we did the shadows because I want this to be pretty bright. So I'm thinking around like 60% looks pretty good on there. And then once that's dropped, I can just kind of fine tune some of the stuff here if I don't really like it or think that it just needs kind of played with a little bit there. All right, I think that looks pretty good. So that's going to be our basic design with the shadows and the highlights and the color flats. Let's add a quick background here. We kind of have a background already, but don't want the big white spot back here behind the character. So let's come up here to layers. Let's make a new layer behind everything. Still on top of our sketch layer, but we've got that turned off, so that's okay. Let's go up to our color palette again, and let's choose the blue here that we use for the eyes. I'm gonna zoom out just a little bit, and let's just do kind of like a geometric shape here, nothing too fancy. And then using the eraser, I'm just gonna kind of sharpen the edges so they're nice and sharp on the corners. All right, I think that looks pretty good. Then finally, new layer on top of that one. We've got one last color left, the yellow here. Let's just do a round sun here. Holding down with the Apple Pencil and then down with your other finger will lock in a perfect circle. And then you can drag and drop the color in there just like that. Easy way to make a quick circle. Finally, I'm just going to switch back to black. And using that streamline, I'm going to come down here and sign this guy. And we will be done with today's tutorial, a cute little cartoon beaver. First video that I've done using my new Pro Draw grip. Like I said, so excited that I could finally announce this and release it because it's been a labor of love for over 1.5 years, almost 2 years. Feels great to bring it to market. And like I said in the other video too, stay tuned because I have other products kind of in the pipeline in the late development phases all the way to kind of the prototyping stages right now. So appreciate the support on that. If you guys haven't checked it out yet, links in the description, www.prodraw, that's pro-draw.com. Love seeing everybody that's got them so far, and definitely share your videos, photos, unboxing, stuff like that. And you might see it on my channel, on my Instagram, or even on the official ProDraw accounts. If you like today's video too, make sure you give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit that bell for notifications. And speaking of sharing, if you guys follow along with any of my video tutorials, if you make a design based on one of these, definitely share it online. If you're on Instagram or Twitter, tag me at BeeJayDeL for your chance to possibly see your design featured in one of my upcoming videos. Love seeing what you guys make by watching these, so thanks so much for constantly sharing on the social media. Makes me super happy, and I love seeing it. So that's it for me today. I can also be found online, BeeJayDeL.com. So until next time, keep creating.